So for today's math lesson, we're working with 7-2 mixed practice, solve addition and subtraction problems. The I can statement is I can use drawings and equations to make sense of the words in problems. That means that we're going to find different ways, just like we did yesterday, we're going to find different ways to model the equations hidden inside word problems. Aiden, let's look at solve and share. Aiden has 27 fewer crayons this week than last week. Last week, he had 56 crayons. How many crayons does Aiden have this week? So what are we being asked to do here? We're being asked, how many crayons does he have now? How many crayons does he have this week? We know that last week he had 56 crayons, so he started with 56. And he has 27 fewer. That fewer tells me that this is a subtraction problem. Something happened to his crayons, and now there are 27 fewer crayons than there were before. Here's one way I could solve that. I know that last week he had 56, and something happened. Maybe he gave away or lost 27 of them. I can make an equation. I need to regroup. That 6 becomes a 16. And after solving the equation, we find out that he had 29 crayons this week. Let's go to the next page. Let's go to guided practice. Okay, next let's look at the visual learning boxes at the top. Here's what the problem is. Sally has 28 fewer blocks than Nigel. Sally has 26 blocks. How many blocks does Nigel have? And our friend here is telling us, let's think about who has fewer blocks and who has more blocks. So if Sally has 28 fewer blocks than Nigel, who is going to have more blocks? Nigel will have more blocks. We know that Sally has 26, and she has 28 fewer than Nigel. In the next box, they show us a bar diagram. A bar diagram can help you think about the problem. And we know in the big box at the top is going to be the amount of blocks Nigel has. And in the two smaller boxes at the bottom, we have one for Sally's blocks and one for the 28 blocks. That's the difference between her blocks and Nigel's. And Sally's blocks and 28 blocks together are the same size as Nigel's blocks. So our equation is going to look like this down here. 26 plus 28 equals question mark. The question mark, remember from yesterday, stands for an unknown number. The unknown number is the amount Nigel has. Our friend here tells us that Sally has 28 fewer blocks than Nigel. That means Nigel has more than Sally, and that we need to add. And in the last box, you see the equation. And our sum is 54. 54 for the amount of blocks Nigel has. Let's go ahead and look at guided practice now. Go ahead and do you understand on your own, and then let's go on to guided practice. So for guided practice, we're going to solve the problem using any way we choose. That means we can pick bar diagram, we can pick equation, you could use drawings and equations to help you. Lakota has 11 fewer magnets than Jeffrey. Lakota has 25 magnets. How many magnets does Jeffrey have? Okay, let's think about the same question that we thought about, or the same response that we thought about in the visual learning problem. Who is going to have more magnets, right? In the last one, we talked about who had more blocks, and it was Nigel. In this problem, who is going to have more magnets? Jeffrey will have more, but we don't know Jeffrey's amount. So we're just going to write a question mark for Jeffrey, and Jeffrey's amount is going to be the number that goes in the bigger box. That means the two smaller boxes are going to be 25 for how much Lakota has, and 11 for the difference between Lakota's blocks, or her magnets, and Jeffrey's magnets. Then they gave us an equation to solve 25 plus 11. Now we know we need to add, because 25 and 11 is going to equal Jeffrey's amount. So after solving the equation, we find out that Jeffrey has 36 magnets. Now let's take a look at independent practice. You can solve each problem using any way you choose. You can use drawings and equations to help you, but you have to show your work. In number 2, there are 28 more students than adults at the school fair, and there are 96 students at the school fair. How many adults are at the school fair? So we have this big event that has both students and adults, and we're trying to find out how many adults are there. What do we know? We know that there's 96 students, and the difference between students and adults is 28. How would you find out what kind of equation this is? These are the things that we'll have to think about as we solve lesson 7-2. When you finish independent practice, go ahead to math practices and problem solving. Then tune in for the lesson 7-3 video. Goodbye.